We should probably explain what is on the table in front of us.
Yes.
There is a book, an award, and the author who wrote said book is sitting right over there. So maybe we should run down. Let's talk about the book.
Okay.
And how was it inspired and blah, blah, blah. So,
Yeah. I would say this book began as me trying to make sense of 2020. So it's being written live. It's not a looking back thing where I go, I want to explore a story in that period. It was writing live in the moment. So every day as I'm writing, I'm looking at the news. Then I'm experiencing things like my first time lockdown, first time putting on a mask, first time social distancing, all that. And then gradually just it evolving into an epic global story, and just and then deciding, hey, this might be the one I want to do as a debut as a director further down the line.
Right,
So,
yes.
and that I had that understanding as I was maybe quarter way through the novel. Started to think that, but I tried not to let that. First of all, we had to get the novel down, publish that. And just it took on a life of its own. I think because I was so inspired by what everyone was experiencing.
Yeah.
But it pretty much evolved into where the 2020 was the background. So 2020 as in the lockdowns, COVID, all that. And then it evolved into much, much bigger themes.
So sort of a product of circumstance, you could say.
Definitely.
Because, the world changed. So the amount of stories that come out of that and the disappointment in the general public of society, they can't deal with change.
Right.
Fighting over toilet paper and buying all this crazy stuff like all the meat, all the bread. You don't need all the meat. You don't need all the bread. And you definitely don't need a fight. I got pushed over in the supermarket one day.
Wow.
Because they were fighting over toilet paper, and I was just like, man, just have it. Like I was just walking past. I was like, are you kidding me? But yeah, people in large groups, what's that? Society.
Yeah.
That's what people in large groups, isn't it? Is that the definition?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They can't cope with change.
No. And this was a difficult one also because there was so many arguments behind the scenes even within families and all that. So it covers, basically my goal was I didn't know what was happening and I still have no answers to this whole era.
That's right.
But I think I was trying to ask questions. So that's my only job. I don't think storytellers should present answers, but if you can ask pertinent questions, and that involved giving a voice to everyone. Sort of if you imagine like a smorgasbord of opinions about this era, which included, polar opposites, whether it's pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-lockdown, all that stuff, and then people in between. So then that started to bring up sort of, the way I look at stories is when you strip away characters with stories like this, you've really got, what excites me is competing philosophies.
Yeah.
That's what the characters are. And then you're starting to get into some interesting, it's often the grey areas in between. And
true.
Where it's tricky is no one's right or wrong. And so you can't get into judging any character. You just have to go, this person's real. And how many times do we all say, oh, I hated that sort of person, and then 5 years later you go, actually, maybe they were right.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I've had first-hand experience of you, more so with people I've worked with, and I go, I can't stand them. And then you end up being really good mates with them down the track.
Yeah.
It's really, that actually happens a lot, that the initial relationship you have with someone usually evolves into something else. Maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time it does.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my favorite sort of character, the one that you hate or are reacting to at first, but then when they reveal themselves to be a good character, you actually like them more, and it's kind of like that in real life.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
So how long did it take to write the book?
About 6 months. So it was actually out October 23, 2020, and I remember going, okay, so I have to sort of figure out what would happen for the rest of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was worried that other things would happen, but luckily by about October, it was pretty much set.
Yeah,
it was
right.
a certain way, and I remember not much changed.
Yeah, nice.
So it was 6 months, but it was really intense because a lot of that was during the lockdown here in Sydney, Australia.
Yep.
And we were just bogged down, and it was so. I'm not really I'm pretty much apolitical. Not really into it. Don't believe in the political system. But with this, I've never followed it so much. I've never followed the news as much. It was
Well, the world changed, and no one had ever gone through this. And it wasn't like a certain country either. It was the entire world. Everywhere was affected. And I think that's quite unique in itself, don't you reckon?
Definitely, yeah.
And you said before that, like, it took you about 6 months.
Yeah.
Is there an average? Because, like, some people might take decades to write a book or whatever, which you have on certain stories. But is there an average time frame that a book could be written in? Or not? That's too much of a general
Well, it
question.
also depends. See, someone could say they wrote a book I've got some that I've written for a couple of years, right? But then it's not as intense as 6 months during lockdown is different. Do you know what I mean? It was more like a year or so, the equivalent.
Yeah, right.
But I'd say the average is about 6 to 12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.